let's get started today. Class mode. Hi. Today, this is day 8, week 4. That track of the workshop, and today we are finally we are continuing on from where we're at last week with where we expanded on the torso. We basically concluded a more advanced. Whoa, that's my email. Sorry. We gave a more detailed look into the torso itself. Now, I'm gonna close my social media tabs as well. They have unwelcome sounds in them. Today we're gonna zoom in on parts of the body, specifically starting with hands. There are videos I could put on, but I can actually just explain most of this myself. And I have a couple more things I wanted to mention, but that can come later on. So, again, no homework submissions. No, it's okay. It's okay. I'm not offended or anything that no one's submitting the practice review. I'm not. But I mean, as long as people, like, if you're choosing not to do the practice, and you think, yeah, I got this, I know how people move. If you're that confident in yourself, all right, more power to you. But now we're getting into a section where I know people are a bit less versed in than they think they are. Chatter says Chinese New Year has been busy. Many apologies. Don't apologize. It's okay. This is entirely just like, okay, well, if you want to come up here, if you want me to talk about some things, it's okay. I can. I'll just proceed on with how I plan to do things. So, we're talking about hands today. Actually, let me look up a handy graphic, if I can, about how hands work. Let's look for my friend Stan Prokopenko. Do you have a graphic so that I don't have to draw it myself? We're going to be talking a lot about hands today. And the first place that we start about hands, it starts from how they realistically are structured. So, I'd like to start with a bit on the anatomy of hands. And if I can't find a decent image tutorial about it, or at least an image graphic about it, it sounds like I got to make it myself, which is fun. It's not that bad, actually, honestly, because it's literally the least I can do as your instructor. But I just like it to be a little more convenient for myself. And the works of a master. The works of, like, not to say that I'm not a master. Who said I'm not a master? I'm not a master. I said that. I'm not a master at all. But just having, like, literally any other clean graphic provided helps a lot. I don't think there is one. I don't think there's a clean graphic about the skeleton of the hand, so I'll just pull up skeleton hand. So let's talk about let's get a model, actually. Hands. So let's talk about this. So let's break down hands into what they realistically are. So you might not realize it, you might not have known in your lifetime that the hands are really, really messed up. They're literally just a bunch of bones. They're nothing but bones surrounded in muscle, like around up to here, and fat, which is all this is up here. There is no muscle in your fingers. There's nothing, but it's just fat, which is crazy. But the hand is roughly divided into this section of your wrist bones, which is a big, huge mass, which you don't have to worry about in drawing and depicting, because you never see all of these individual bones at play, no matter how you twist or turn your hand. you're never going to see it. Even if you do this, even if you do this. Really, really easy to tell what these are, I'm sure. But you don't have to worry about that. But what you should worry about, excuse me as I pull up terms about how the anatomy terms of the hand. I looked it up this morning, and then I promptly forgot because I did. Hand skeletal terms. We'll get another graphic on screen that'll help us. Right. Bam. Here we go. So, the wrist bones are your carpals. Your carpals then connect to the metacarpals. These are on a hand. Now let's just draw a hand straight out. I'll show you what I mean. And this is a light demo for what we'll be getting into later on, as I break down how a hand works. Two, 1, 2. And this is not a perfect hand. This is purely for demonstrational purposes of having a tool to explain things with. So, if we were to observe parts of the hand, your metacarpals are like somewhere around here. Somewhere hereabouts. Sorry, your carpals of your wrists are right here, which then connect, or rather your metacarpals are then connected to these bony segments. They go up to about where the knuckles are. These are for your primary fingers, your primary digits. Hereabouts. And then your thumb has a very long, very flexible metacarpal, to which everything connects to, and then those extend into your phalanges. Yes, the anatomy lesson is very important. It's very integral to understanding how the hand works. Chatter! Hello! Hi, Sensei. Sorry, I've been slacking. It's okay. You're forgiven for now. But your ass is grass next time I see you. It's okay. But the metacarpals can then connect to your phalanges. And that is significant to understand. When you look at your hand, it looks different when you look at the front and back of it. So I'll do one more. And that is because fat and skin work differently on the different sides of the hand. From the front, you don't really see a lot of the webbing of the hand. You tend to see just like straight up how it is. So fingers appear taller than they do from your palm side, rather than from the back, which they appear shorter because of the webbing of your hands. So something like this. I might have illustrated it a bit off. The differences might not be super clear, but believe me, we gotta remember when we're looking at... Goodness gracious, the auto mod stopped a message from coming through. Woke up from a nap? Who up? I don't think I want to say this one, but the auto mod stopped the phrasing of it. Basically the skin wraps around here. That got auto-modded? Yes, it did get auto-modded. Innuendo is not permitted on twitch.tv by default. But basically, yeah, that's your skin wraps around there. Where are they talking? People just walking in? In whose endo? Where was I? Sorry, just summing this back up for anyone who's just walking in. Here is the carpals. These are your wrist bones. They are a bunch of different bones, but we don't have to worry about drawing them. We can stick to depicting them as just like a simple block upon which everything sits upon. Because connected to the carpals are the metacarpals, which are these 4 bones that stick out. And they are basically the major controllers of your fingers. Your thumb is connected to a metacarpal, but you can basically consider it as like the 3rd joint because the thumb can like fully rotate in very dynamic ranges in comparison to the metacarpals that make up your palm. These don't really move as much. They don't have as much flexion. And you'll notice when you curl up your hand into a ball, I was doing it myself to try and, you know, visualize it, but then I have to remember this isn't like a real camera. You're just looking at a PNG tuber. You'll notice when you try to flex your palm, you're only really flexing the top of your phalanges. Metacarpals are connected to your phalanges. Your phalanges are connected to the metacarpals. You can't really like curl your palm. It doesn't really happen because there isn't a wide range of motion except in the thumb itself. So there's that. And that's the basic anatomy. And when you're when you're looking at a hand, the palm side appears longer than the back of your hand because of how skin wraps around. Once again, webbing. You tend to see the webbing of the palm from the front, or rather from the back of your hand compared to the palm side. And another thing to note about the hands, there's not a lot of muscle in them. There's a lot of muscle primarily around here, around the front of your, not necessarily front, but from the wrist end, there's a lot more muscles in there. I'm not going to define them at this time. The Twitch VOD, sorry, the YouTube VOD will have links to videos that I recommend checking out, but we're not going to waste time today watching those ourselves because they're just not relevant. They're just not really relevant right now. And everything I need to teach you about hands, I can just talk about myself. In comparison to everything else, the body, that was all a bunch of necessary stuff I needed someone else to supplement with. And also because they get you to look at other resources, more masters who understand what they're doing, and I get to explain the master's process. But at this point, I can talk about hands pretty decently. So that's the internals of your hand. Let's talk about the shapes they make. So moving on from that. And one more thing about muscles in hands. So there's a lot of muscle, you know, that makes up like how these joints move together, how your parts of your palm appear to flex together. But your fingers tend to have a lot of fat. Your hands in general tend to contain a lot of fat, which is how you can get the fat finger phenomenon, but also the really gangly, bony looking fingers, because if you don't have a lot of fat, you get bony fingers. You get really gangly looking hands, because your hands are primarily bones, primarily skin and bones. So keep that in mind when you want to draw certain things. You get salad fingers. Yes, this is true. No, salad fingers is a freak of nature who has no skin on his palms. But let's get into the shapes that make up the hand. So we can easily look at the hand as a sort of trapezoid. You can get this sort of shape. You can roughly estimate it to be however you need it to be. There isn't really like any hard fast rule other than relate it to the size of a person's face. The palm tends to sit up to the palm itself tends to go up to the middle of the nose. I'm comparing against myself right now. I'm the clear average of all of humanity upon which I can judge this distance. But the rough size of it and the rough scale of it, it does have a little bit of variance. But this is the general shape you can start with for your palm. And from there, we should be aware that because the fingers, they're unevenly spread out, they are longer than each other, we're not necessarily drawing a flat top for the top of the hand. We're drawing it at a slight arch. And as we go through, we can use shapes such as boxes, circles, to illustrate the different shapes of the hand. So this is just one way to do it. This is how you can structure it. And I'll show you another way that I want people to practice when we get to drawing later. But you can basically break it down into something like this. This is not a proportionate hand, but these are the basic shapes that make up a hand. You can proportion out a hand more accurately using the halves method. So if I just drew this, drew a straight line down the middle, and you can relate this into any other perspective, any other direction you're looking at a hand. You can take a straight line, cut it down the middle, ish. Here's your palm. There's your palm. Maybe a little bit more. Maybe I think around here is half. Draw your palm shape. Comes down like that. And then from there, there's your middle finger. And you can draw the rest of your fingers in tow. They follow a really, really rough scale. You just gotta you gotta try and find where the correct arch is through everything. It's a really, like, it kind of depends on the person, but generally speaking, there is just there's an arch, and the arch follows all of the way down. So as I was saying, you can find how to proportion the primary portions of the hand through the halves method. You take this middle finger as is, cut it in half. Right here. Then you cut it in half. That's how you get your joints. Then you cut that in half, and that's how you get a fingernail. And you basically just go down the way for everything else. Your first joint is very long. Then that cuts in half further, and further and further. Half, half. Then your thumb is an outlier. It fits in around here-ish. You can use a big box. You can use a tie shape. This is what I like to use to visualize the metacarpal of the thumb. And the thumb itself, if it was standing straight up like everything else, it probably lines up, and if we look at this, probably lines up about halfway through the first phalange of the index finger. So something like this. I have to go do a household thing, but this is the basic shape and basic proportions of a hand. Give me a quick second, and I'll be right back to talk about more about the hand. Hello, I'm back. Where was I? One final thing about the hand. So again, your middle finger is roughly equivalent in height to the palm of your hand. But it's also important to note your fingers do not stick straight up. There is a really, really slight curve where they go inwards. They fold inwards. So keep that in mind if you ever see a hand work a certain way. And the curve of your fingers, they all tend to line up. So that's one way you can kind of keep the proportion of everything in check. You just compare it to this primary curve of the hand. First time chatter screams loud as frick right now. Wow! Goodness gracious. Hi. Welcome to stream. I'm talking about hands. So that's that. What else do I need to get into? I'll talk a bit more about shapes. Let's talk about... oh, that's a command? Alright. Ah! That's as far as my limiter can go. But I hope that was pretty loud and shrill. You're welcome, chat. Let's see, more shapes. Let's talk about it in 3 dimensions. If we look at the shape of a hand in 3 dimensions, it is a block. It's a fairly thin block, but a block nonetheless. This is just a hand in slight perspective. The shapes I play... Let's actually do it from the side profile first, because the shapes that I'd like people to play with in regards to how fingers are shaped. And this is purely to give you a constructing perspective for how to build it. So, hold on, we'll do this one more time. We'll make a straight line. We'll use the have method. Something about there. And this is purely looking at the middle finger. Also rude. The Proco video, honestly, is actually kind of strange. There's a lot of, like, whipping involved of the skeleton. I don't know why he chose to be really, like, mean about it that day. But that's in the video. So about half, and then half again. But basically, you can consider the joint. This circle represents the joint upon which your phalange connects to the metacarpal. And the way I like to think about it, when I really need to think about structure, we take this slightly arched block, and believe me, there's a purpose to this, because there is just like a little bit of when you look at the bones of it, especially, you can see this slight arch occur in the bone itself. Even within nature, we have a natural sense of, as I was referring to during figure drawing, there's a flat and a curve that accompanies it. So in this case, I'm representing that with this block that comes out and curves into the next joint, to represent with the circle. Block, curve, circle, and a straight. And then we can represent this one final one a little bit like this. It's got a little bit of a hook at the end. In 3 dimensions, we can look at it like so. Plane of a box. Here's the top. Cut this into quartz, and then circle. Funky looking thing. Circle again. No, I'll make this easier actually. Draw lines first. Draw lines seeking the shape of the hand as it comes out. We'll actually do it. Nah, it looks better this way. Mark off the halfway points on these lines. They're at a curve. Halfway, 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 halfway. They're all sitting on this curve. And then circle, 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 circle. Flat top, arched inner area. Into circle joint. Flat top, arch, joint, flat top, slight, how did I call it earlier? It's got the arch, and it's got this little point that sticks back in. And this is what I want to see. A hook, thank you. I called it a hook. And so this is the basic construction that I want you to follow as we do hand studies later. Hook, arch. Might be a little bit imperfect, and that's okay. I've drawn it quite imperfectly because this is a super thin finger that is not hooking into the hand, into the palm appropriately. But I don't currently care. We can fix these up. And this is entirely just a structure point of view. Like, you don't always have to do this arch to represent the bone, but I want you to do it right now. Not right now. But when you do your drawings, just so you can understand how it's, like, the inner structure of it. Not everyone is going to be drawing realistic hands. But for today's sake, we will be observing realistic hands. Well, I mean, we'll be observing real hands. So I need everyone to put their thinking caps on. And use realistic shapes to construct a hand. And you can represent a knuckle with a diamond shape. You might have known that already. You might not have known that. I remember being about 12 years old and I finally learned how to draw hands somewhat halfway decently. And I was like, what? There are just bones inside my hand? And they all connect like that back to my wrist? That's crazy! You don't have to draw it always like this. You don't always have to put a line right there. But if it helps you, you can do that. Definitely draw these a lot bigger. Draw them so that they slot more into the palm itself. And one way you can, instead of always just doing this French fry method, drawing lines out, what I like to do when I draw hands is I draw by sight. Duh, of course I draw by sight. I draw by grouping things together. So you don't always necessarily need to draw one finger at a time. If there is a group of fingers, you can use a mitten method. Just clump them all together. Clump them all together like this. And you can separate them out as such. You can further emphasize that arch, kind of like that. And if it's not spaced out enough for a proper finger, that just means you needed to re-evaluate how wide everything is. And this is entirely for just like seeking the starting gesture. Not everything so evenly pans out. Actually, no, the halfway is more like right here. Then we snap that in half even more. And your pinky is always going to be the short one. Pinky is always going to be the one that comes up a little bit short in these sorts of things. The mitten method isn't completely failless. It is fallible because, as you can see here, like this doesn't look totally natural. But this is for sighting. This is for trying to find gesture and all of that. So the secret to hands is that what people tend to get wrong in hands, what people tend to not grasp in hands, is the motion and the proportion of them, really. Some people might draw hands really skinny. Some people might draw fingers too skinny or with not enough, with too much, rather too much. detail without fully understanding how all that detail comes together. So I believe that's pretty much the majority of what I need to talk about in regards to hands. Yeah, pretty much. That's a lot of the structure. Again, you can do it like this normally. You can also just do it with like circles, cylinders, and cross contour lines if you so desire, or you can just like skip straight to cylinders and chop them up using cross contour lines. Too low, too low. It's a common mistake that I still do all of the time. I draw the middle joint, sorry, the first joint, too short, and I let these two be longer. One of my bad habits, one of my bad art habits, is boiling the hand down into this two joint hook. And on more stylized stuff, maybe you can get away with this, but it's important to note, like, if I'm doing this to find roughly where the halfway point is, there's still another joint in there. It's hidden halfway up, and further push that sort of appearance, like this, just by keeping in mind the third joint. You can add more realism that way. Maybe my way has a bit more dynamicism to it. Who knows? But those are just the different ways you can do it. Try to keep the hooked arch that leads into a circle joint. Sorry, arch that leads into a joint that then ends in a hooked tip in mind. Does anyone have any questions? Let's go with that. Does anyone have any questions about hands still? I've discussed shaping them. I've discussed proportions of them. I've discussed what to keep in mind in regard to how they move. And yeah, is there anything? Sound off if there isn't any questions as well. Kind of need that. Man, I'm hungry. Following? You're good? All right. So, if you think you're good, well, let's get into a little bit of figure drawing then. Let me think about how we're going to do this today. Today we're going to do Pondering. We're gonna do gesture drawing, but for hands this time. A lot of what you understand about drawing the figure as a whole will still apply to hands. Yes, it's unbelievable, but it is how it works. So just keeping in mind basic shapes of this slightly arched box. You can use tubes to break it down. So on and so forth. Sorry, I'm just stalling because I'm trying to remember what exactly is there really nothing else I need to know? Or rather go over? Alright, well, I'll start with the demonstration. I'll start with a demonstration of exactly how do you find gesture. Because that's the next part, right? That really is the next part. It's good to know structure. How the heck do you apply gesture to something you're just learning how to draw? And it's just the same process. We just gotta look for where the area of the strongest motion is. So, let me open up a window. Yes, excellent. Okay, all right. F11. All right. We're on line of action today, because I think photos are decently good. What's the word? They'll be better than a video today, I feel. Because I want to believe photos can help us see where, just more stuff. Not necessarily. I just think a photo is a bit easier to draw than a live person in this instance, because most videos, they only film a person from one angle. You can get a photo from many different angles. So that's how I feel about it. Woo, too much. Clothed models, huh? Sure, buddy. Well, all right. Let me get a good hand model. So, yeah. Oh, just pause. Let me break down drawing a... let's get a different one. I want a hand with a lot of gesture. Let's do this. We'll do this one up here. It'll help for talking about gesture. Oh. I will hone in on it. Let's find the gesture of this hand. The boxing glove, the boxing gloves one look good. Yeah, I bet. So, let's clear all of this off, and I'll talk about gesture in a hand. So, the way you find gesture in a hand is the same way you would do any other body. You just look for where the area of strongest like movement is. How can you apply a curve, a straight, or an S curve through the hand? And it can actually exist. There can be an S sometimes, not often, because an S is usually represented by twist. But looking just at this hand, we can see there's a lot of motion going on in how that thumb and the middle finger and ring finger are pulling up together. You can see that, and the two fingers that are splayed out, and then we connect it all with that box we talked about. And there's a bit of foreshortening, so this is actually a bit more of a curve. When you're doing hand gesture drawing, you're not super concerned with the structure, but more how do these things move? Same principle, same guiding principle behind everything we do. And that's just the gesture. If I wanted to try and draw this a bit more, how do we say, with more concrete shapes, a bit more to life, then I can just sort of break this down. So we'd all, sorry, all right, ooh. It's really bugging me on my OBS overlay. Is it still giving me the dimensions of that window? So we can see from this photo, it's a pretty good straight-on view of the hand. We've got that whole view of the middle finger, in which we can start it. Are we currently on the professor? The box is blank. I've completely forgot to change that. Currently on hand demonstration. I might be a little bit loopy today. I apologize. We're on demoing hands. I'm demoing how to draw a live hand. So we're talking about sighting. We see here a very clear distinction across the wrist, where the wrist would be, to the top of the middle finger, ring finger actually, but we can get something close enough, and hereabouts, and that's how we can measure how tall the hand should be, how tall the palm itself should be. We look for how is this arm yeah, how is this arm connected into the wrist, which we can represent as a box, if we so desire. A bit more to this. The metacarpal of the thumb sticks out like a box, slight box. It's foreshortened a bit, so we actually don't really see the metacarpal itself. It's probably folded in somewhere here, but the tip of the phalanges, rather just the phalanges itself, is sticking out like this. And if we were to use the method I described, the thumb is a bit wide, but it still does follow that hook tip shape along with the arch into the joint. And you can use a ball. Actually, you can just use a ball, a really condensed ball, or you can use a cylinder to represent that joint. Either way, we can do that. We're just citing. We're thinking about things in relation to one another. We can use the triangle. We didn't talk about this in depth, but if you create a triangle relative to something, in this case, I'm comparing, because I haven't drawn the index finger yet, I'm looking at the length of this tip of the thumb to about where it is on the photo. And I'm seeing there's actually a lot more of a right angle present in the photo. So then I'd make my adjustment. And we can see there's a bit of the front of the thumb visible there. And we're not drawing a perfectly... I'm not having you guys draw perfectly accurate hands. I might have you. I mean, if you want to go into detail, you totally can if you have time. But I just mostly want you to see structure and practice seeing gesture inside of a hand. Because that's the secret to hands. It really is. I've had people ask me, how do you draw hands so well? Sometimes I don't draw them well. I do still struggle with more mundane hand poses. But understanding the anatomy of a hand and understanding how things move and fold together is one big part to comprehending how hands should look, how they should work. So we'll take half of this and cut that in half some more. Half of this, cut that in half some more. Half of this, half again, half and half again. And they're all kind of following the arch that we need. Once again, the arch tends to follow all of the way down the hand. And if we were to use the method I described, this shape, it works best from a side view of the hand. But in this case, since you're looking at it more straight on, it's perfectly fine to just simplify it to tubes, cylinders, going into ball joints, if you so desire. Because when you're further along and you have more experience drawing hands, you can just simplify it to the cylinder. Because the joint is visible. The joint is visible when you're just holding your fingers up. That doesn't go away or anything. But again, you can just do this if it's just standing like that. However, when a finger starts to bend, that tube comes apart and exposes the joint. So just keep that in mind. If you think, I'll just draw tubes, and they'll just go like this. No, don't do that. You can, I guess, if it works for you, but you gotta remember there's a joint hidden in there that you have to depict. So this is a fairly basic hand to be looking for how to shape it out. Did that make sense to anybody? My thumb might still be too short. But this is the basics of drawing a hand. Let's get another picture. Goodness gracious, this lady's ripped. But not everyone can see it. Oh man, this is actually gonna be kind of tough because I want to focus in on how these models show their hands, but it's not all uniform. It's kind of hard. I'll do one more demo. Ah, ah, ah! Gotta move this all of the way down. But do hands seem to make sense to anybody? The way I am demonstrating it / describing it. We'll do both of these now. And I'll show you how I look for these sort of things. This one's at an angle, this one's in perspective. Gotta keep in mind how boxes move, how boxes work. So in this instance, remember what I talked about before. Perspective is nonsense, and there's several things of perspective. Many things will have many different perspectives acting upon them. In this case, this left hand, its palm, they both recede to this vanishing point. So I try to make sure that those angles are roughly like lined up like that. We've got the very, very top end of the palm. And what we can do here, we can use the mitten method of just clumping together a few fingers and then separating out one of them. And this is slightly tough because it's in perspective. It's in extreme perspective even. Everything is foreshortening in on itself. Maybe it's a little bit of a stretch to try and make people do the whole the more complicated appearance to things that I would have liked, but and I'm doing this by I'm doing this without the citing methods. I apologize. I was just doing it by reflex, and I can't do that when I'm demonstrating for people. You can you can show where the front plane of your fingers are just by following where the fingernail is. It's again fingernail, bottom of the fingernail, found by having the very top phalange. So this is the front plane, and if you really want to, you can continue that front plane all the way down. There is a bit of a fat pad present here, which excuses the finger not being perfectly aligned on that end. But you can see that finger is a bit at an angle. And it's also falling off of the platform, the little box that he's got for himself. But even still, the curve at which you are drawing the fingers should still apply. Even in perspective, there is a slight amount of that going on here. This is how you can do that. But even still, you would just be cutting roughly the shape you are seeing in half all of the way down. It's actually more like this because of how that fingernail informs us of where that hand, or rather where that finger is facing. Just draw this all of the way down. You can choose to do that for now, but the real apex of the mitten should still be the middle finger. Let's cut that in half. Sorry, from the middle joint. From the first joint. Cut that in half. Thought his index finger was bent for real. Yeah, it's kind of funky. Hands work in funkier ways than you might think. This pinky finger is falling off of the thing. That screws with me more than anything, honestly. So fingernail. Fingernails aren't always, wrapping around the shape of your finger. They're not always a contour against it, but it might be easier for you to think of them as such even if it's not necessarily more realistic. If you want another way to just add a bit more variety to your shapes, you can squish them in. You can think of it like this. They squish into each other. And that's how they separate. That's how those separate cylinders. That's how a tube becomes separated cylinders in a way. You just squish them up. In this case, I'm adding a bit more gesture than there might actually be because his hands are, in fact, very splayed out, very, very solid against the surface he's resting on. But this is how you find hands. His knuckles are facing out a bit, more or less. That's how it goes. And if we were to use a sighting method on this really frontward facing hand, we can take it from the wrist, which is slightly elevated, so keep that in mind, to the middle finger, slightly elevated, cut it in half. This is the basis of shortening. Even if you cut it in half, relatively, things should still be aligning in proportion. Cut that in half. Cut that in half. And I've stopped sighting altogether, basically. But you can come to grasp these sort of things. You slowly come to grasp these sort of things intuitively. I'm getting a little bit ahead of everybody just by drawing it like this. But the sighting method does generally work. You know, just cut it all halves all of the way down. Does that make sense? This might make more sense once you get into it. Or it might start to make less sense, because drawing hands are hard. But let's draw the other hand really quick, just to demonstrate it. And really, if you start with a palm, if you start with the palm, just like if you start with the head on a figure drawing, then you're basically, you got to figure out where everything else aligns along with it. Maybe that's not a super apt comparison, but if you already started the palm, this is the scale you're working at for your resultant fingers. So like about as long as this is how far the middle finger will need to be. In this case, I'm going to draw them as tubes. In this case, actually, I overshot it because there's a lot of overlap going on. You can't really see where that middle finger is, or rather where the index finger is starting, because his hand is doing a whole big task at holding himself up. And not every hand you look at can be so easily clumped together using the mitten method. Sometimes you're just gonna have to get in there and do things the hard way. But again, cite these things out. Draw things relative to the biggest thing around it. If you know how long your middle finger needs to be, then you just ever so slightly coordinate the rest of the fingers around it. And in this case, we don't even see the thumb. It's completely obscured from view. And the wrist is bent upwards. It meets the hand at a funny angle. Again, can use fingernails to identify the front plane of your hands. Does that make sense? Does that all make sense? I'm very much using the method that I understand hands. This is how I personally process hands. Proco is not that much different. But if people want, I can put the Proco video on, and then we can jump back to doing some drawing together. Because this is all it is. This is all that I have to talk about today. And the rest of it is just practicing for like maybe the next 40 minutes. We might have to resort back to videos because this is very, very difficult to find anything appropriate to work with. And models. Let's try that. And model. And photos for practice. Oh! There's a separate hands and feet thing on lineofaction.com. Awesome. I could have been doing that the whole time. Goodness gracious. We're not doing feet today. We're doing feet next Monday. And then we'll do the head. But we might do specialized stuff. Anyway. Yeah, any questions? Any questions I can answer at this given time? Please sound off if there are no questions to begin with. Otherwise, we're gonna get into this. We're just gonna. Ooh, that's good. That's good. That's a good zoom in on things. Now I'm fixing the window. Is there a quick way to bring things back to their default state in OBS? That'd be nice. If there are no questions, we're just gonna fire into the figure drawing. We're gonna be doing. You thinking you're following? All right, thank you. So let's change the today's lesson part. Currently on hand gesture drawing. We're gonna do some warm-ups. We're gonna do about 10 60-second hand warm-ups where I want you to use your CSI lines to. We'll obviously start with the box. Use a box for the palm, but try and find the gesture of the fingers that you can do. Honestly, maybe 30 seconds, actually, because that's just for the gesture warm-up. Yeah, we'll do 10 30 seconds. 10 30-second hand drawings. I want you to use your CSI lines. A line of action in a hand can follow from the wrist to the index finger. It can follow from the wrist to the pinky. Once again, generally the point of which is the longest extension that you could find. So just keep that in mind. We're gonna go through this. Try it yourself. If you have trouble understanding just the CSI lines part, leave it in chat. And I will answer when we're done. So, let's get drawing. 30 seconds on the clock. Go! Not a lot of time. Not a lot of time to break down all of these hands. Ooh, all these good hands. You can use CSI lines to draw it with more dimension as well. As in, like, draw it like with boxes. So this is what I did for mine. Not necessarily just draw single lines for those gestures. Some of these may prove tougher than others. In this case, like this. I'm putting a bit of pressure on you guys to be figuring out where everything is, but also because it's a hand. I know it's new, so it's a bit hard to totally see where gesture is, but there's also like not a lot of detail to hands that warrant, you know, a full 60 seconds, I feel. So I hope nobody minds. I didn't talk about the properties of a closed fist either. Most cases, if you're holding something, well, once again, the curve will still follow. But if you're closing your fist, your hands tend to close in towards itself because of the way the hand is curved. I'll show that off. This is what I'm on. I'm following things I can see, such as, you know, obviously the shape of the hand, but also the webbing right here of the thumb. You can follow things like that when you're doing gesture, and you're recalling from life. You don't have to draw both hands, by the way. Like, you didn't have to draw both hands if you didn't have time for it. I am, though. I'm drawing everything that the photo has to offer that I can pick up in a short amount of time. Palms contain a lot of curve, often follow, you know, general waves to everything. I'd hate to think this is one of the most important lessons to be giving. A lot of people struggle with hands because they don't understand the motion of hands. And I like to think I understand the motion of hands, but I really want to be able to convey how they work in a manner that makes sense. Because hands are so important. The gestures of hands, I honestly have a lot of fun finding gesture in hands. And I want other people to be able to see that as well. In this case, these fingers are slightly splayed out. You could have connected them with one arch. Someone's hanging above. It's doing that. They're holding this thing real daintily. But yeah, use lumped curves. Use the mitten method if you must to emphasize how everything moves as one. Have we gotten 10 yet? Was anyone keeping track? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We'll do 2 more of these. Interlocking hands, my beloved. They're still very tough. I love to draw just plain hands on their own. Put 2 hands together, you're really messing me up. That's the real evil going on there. Alright, this will be the last one. And actually, I will pause this one and just take 10 more seconds to draw that last hand you're on, whichever one it is. One other thing I want to talk about in regards to the gesture of hands is fat pads. Fat pads provide a lot of gesture behind how things move around. Didn't talk about the muscle because most of these muscles aren't very relevant, but you can note on this model, this section right here, that's a very clean and distinct part of the hand that you can find gesture with, that you can find separate from everything. And it's okay if your hands aren't like super structural. Mine aren't. All of mine are not necessarily super structural. but I was trying to follow roughly how they seem to be moving. How did everyone else do? That was basically because I lost count of how many hands we were on. I don't know if that was 10 or not. I think it was. You're too structural. Your habits are getting the better of you. That's why we loosen up. That's why we do gesture drawing, to loosen up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 5, 6. 1, 2. Oh my gosh. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, we did do 10. We did do 10. We did roughly 10. Awesome. Wish I had said not needing to draw both hands earlier. I am very sorry for not clarifying that. So sorry. But we're putting you in the grinder. We're putting you in the meat grinder. You're a diamond that needs pressure. And I'm applying the pressure with 30-second gesture drawings. Sorry, I'm just grouping all of this together. You're being crushed into dust. Ideally, you are. So let's. Anyone else? Anyone else want to say how they did? If they were working along? Hands are tough. Trying to find CSI lines in something you might not be used to doing that with is tough. But that's how that's all of mine came out. And you can see I'm not even perfect either. Like, look at these little weird noodles. These weird lines. So like I said, once again, like the next 30 minutes now are just straight drawing. We're just going to be practicing drawing. Maybe we'll do another 10 if people think it's necessary. I kind of think it's necessary because this is still more stuff you're not really used to drawing. So how would people feel about doing another round of that? Once again, don't need to draw every hand, but I'm just gauging. I'm gauging. This is the draw along with me section. So need a bit of feedback. You're ready? You're ready? All right, we're gonna do another set of 10. Do your best, and we'll do a structure after that. So, keep those hands loose. The timer is ticking. Bam, bam, bam. 3, 2, 1, go! One thing I like to do when I'm trying to find gesture, I start with the top of the palm in some cases, because this is a very, very foreshortened hand. Try to find the top of the palm to align where the fingers should go, and then just kind of go off. Sometimes fingers just do their own thing in gesture. I don't have time to draw the second hand, but I mean, if I did, I'd start with the palm. I'd start with how those knuckles wrap around and all of that. Next one. In this one, I can find a pretty good line of action going from the wrist to the index finger. They're all curling out, kind of like this. Thumb sticking out like that. And as I said, I know we don't really do 30-second warm-ups. 30 seconds are actually kind of a norm for drawing classes, but because this is kind of one of the next one. Because it's still like mostly beginner friendly, and I'm not like trying to challenge anyone so badly they want to leave. I've been doing minute-long gesture drawing, but again, it's hands. It's new stuff. There's really not a lot of detail to pick up on hands. There is a lot of detail to pick up on hands, but hands are relatively simpler to draw. Biting down on the wood. Amazing. Once again, this is another case of follow how the palm is curling around. And there's a bit of a curve going across these top joints that are visible. I'm honestly surprised Line of Action has so many, like, decent focused hand images. Very, very, very cool of them. That was 4. Is this the 5th? When we get into structure, that's when you guys are going to need more time, and that's when I will gladly give you all more and more time. I overshot the palm in this one. A little bit over that. We're loosening ya up. We're training that eye. If you were hoping to draw bodies today, I apologize, we're not drawing bodies today. We'll draw bodies another day. Maybe we'll draw bodies in the next section to warm up, because we're going to be attaching feet and tackling feet. But I want you to think about hands today. Metacarpal of the thumb. Interesting. In this one, we can kind of clump together how those other 3 fingers are warping around the apple, and then build into that. And it's not totally what you think it is. That middle finger is overlapping the pinky finger. I'm just making up where the thumb could be in there. Finger guns. Bunch of straights to find. But the hands are very subtly curling inwards on each other. Something also really want to note. If your palm is like not clenched, ooh, sorry. We'll talk about this afterwards. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 2 more. Depending on how you're drawing a closed hand, the index, not that, the ring finger and the pinky finger, they'll either be scrunched in like that, or they'll just be like hanging out like that. Not the time for this, not the time to talk about that. This is the last one. Very last one. Look at that. You can see that going on. And this kind of gets to what I was going to talk about. To distract everybody during the drawing. Hand warm-ups. I think they're fun. I think they are neat. They keep I think it's good to see motion where motion isn't typically. So let's stop right there. I think that's 10. Right, what I was saying. Hands can look like this, where those 2 phalanges hook forward. But if you're drawing a clenched fist, your fingers will tend to centralize towards the center of the palm. So, how did you do on the second round? Does any of this make sense? What the heck is this hand? What is going on in this one? Oh, it was the apple one. Do people feel loosened up? Do people think they see gesture in the hand? And it doesn't have to be like super structural. Like, you just got to see how do fingers move? How do palms curl around stuff? Do we get it a little bit more than we did before? You think? All right then. All right. You're relying on structure too much again. Well, this is something that I will recommend. You should hammer it out of you when you're doing these 30-second warm-ups. And you can do it 60 seconds if you really wish, but I'm doing it shorter form so that you're not thinking too much about the structure. In live gesture drawing sessions, models move really, really quickly so that you have no choice but to view just the motion of how everything looks. And I'm forcing you now, because we learned a lot about hand structure, to forego the structure. If that makes sense. It makes sense to me. But for our next section, we'll be doing form. We'll be doing a little bit of form practice. And give me your feedback on how that is afterwards. Why do I have pings? Someone's messaging me while I'm streaming. So let's get out of here. Thanks. We're going to do. We're gonna go up to 2-minute drawings. You can add more structure. You can try and find how things are really built out of each other in this go around. And we don't need to change the currently on part. So let's get back into it. 2 minutes go. I'm gonna try and draw on the side that it'll be visible for everyone. In this case, they get really bony people, really skinny people to model their hands. That's interesting to me. You can really see how that how those metacarpals come through the skin. And this is what I'm talking about. Hands don't have a lot of muscle. They don't have a lot of, well, they do depend on a lot of fat in order to pad things out. We can see right here in like this bit right here where there seems to be this indent in the hand. That's probably the metacarpal of the thumb being pulled inward. Now we got another minute. We got 1 more minute. Don't spend too long admiring how the palm, the knuckles in the palm stick out. We still gotta find a bit of gesture, a bit of structure. Need to see those work. You can do just like one big long thing and then you cut it in half and then cut that in half again. That's how you get your other thing. Not totally reliable everywhere, like on this pinky. It's curling inward in a really, really odd manner. So it doesn't cleanly divide. We're not using those super advanced shapes yet. Oh, all right, next one. We're not using those super advanced shapes yet because there's just not enough time to do that. But do whatever helps you understand the structure of a hand. Once again, you do not need to draw both hands, only if you have the time to do that. You're confident enough in being able to do that. You really wanted to find gesture, it's right there, coming up from the wrist to the index finger, or you could have followed it from here. Tip of the middle finger into the wrist. But the thing is, right, because we know the fingers are really, your hand is really nothing but a series of straight lines, you can follow a line of action all of the way down each of the fingers. Isn't that an interesting thing to think about? That enough, that enough, that enough, that enough. You'll slowly grasp where the curve that you need in your hands are. It'll just become, it'll have to gradually be something you intuit. It is sadly not something I can just extremely advise on. You build it through a lot of observation. I didn't say how many of these we're doing. We'll do 5. We're doing 5 because they're 2-minute poses. But remember that the arches, the curves for your fingers, they don't perfectly line up with each other. So that's just one of the bigger things to comprehend here. They gotta have some sort of offset, but they're not always like perfectly aligned. So you gotta make a good judgment call. All right, on to the next. Draw on the wrist this time. It's just a block. The palm is facing flat, so it's probably more like this. Probably something a bit more like this. So again, if you figured out the length, or if you've decided on the length of a palm, you've got the length of your middle finger. About the same size, the same length. I might be a little bit off. Okay. I'll draw. You can draw a curve. You can draw a C curve following the middle finger, or rather from the index finger to the index. What? The index to the middle finger. Got someone in chat saying, "Ah, frick! What happened?" And I'm doing the mitten method a bit. Things are clumping together here. Metacarpal. It's another block that sticks out. In this case, do that phalange. I'll show off the joint right there. It's a very good opportunity for it. Cut this in half. Gotta cut them in half. And then cut them in half more. These all return to a point, to the carpal. Next one. Here I found a C curve through the top of the palm. It comes down, and the fat pad of the metacarpal, of the thumb's metacarpal, operates with it like this. Create that curve. A bit of motion coming out of there, coming out of this section here. Try to avoid hand butts where you can. Only if the thumb is like extremely clenched together with everything. This one might be a little bit tougher because some elements are obscured or just less visible. Of course, obscured is less visible, but they're just bent a bit in a bit of an odd way. I can push that a bit more. Thumb's metacarpal, probably somewhere around here. Yes, and that's how I get it closer to there. Again, I can cut this in half, and that's how I get the other half here. The palm, if we look at the gap created in between the thumb and the index finger, it's a bit different than we expect. A bit, it exists, but it's pretty tight. It's a pretty tight window. I'm out of time. Out of time. We're on to the last one. This is the last one. Do not need to draw both hands, only if you have the time for it. There's a nice C curve through this pinky. We can follow this curve up through everything else. The fingers, from the palm to the fingers. Do not beat yourself up if you're thinking to yourself, man, I cannot intuit hands as well as Riv can right now. Do not do that. Do not do that. I have been drawing hands. My third eye opened several years ago. I am an outlier in the hand wars. Hands are very difficult. Hands are very, very difficult to master, and for years I was also struggling. Because I didn't understand gesture. I didn't understand how things seemed to be moving. I was watching a video on Michael Matesi's force method. I'm going to be honest, it really does not make sense to me the way it is explained. But I think on some level, I have been practicing it, which is really interesting. You're just looking for really, really exaggerated C curves, or really it's mostly C curves. This one's about to end. In the force method, you're looking for like really, really exaggerated C curves and opposing C curves to really fill the gesture out and just make something feel a little more forceful in the gesture. It still doesn't really make sense to me, but I think I kind of understand it in theory. But that's unrelated to all of you guys, because this is that's a lot. That's a lot to try and bake in, try to really grasp while we're just practicing gestures and structure. I'm still drawing, but how did the rest of you do? Put your pencils down. How did you do? How did a little bit more time to give it structure feel? Woo! Exhausted? I hope you're exhausted. I'll be honest, I do need to... It was very much a purpose... I was purposefully challenging quite a lot of you, if you were working along, to be doing all of these. Because it's tough. There is no real gentle way to get used to drawing a hand, but to just draw a hand. And see on their left, on the raised hand, it's slightly curved. It's slightly curving inward. That's that tendency for fingers to curl inwards to a point that I talked about. But anyone else? Was anyone else working along on this gesture? You have a bunch of scribbly spiders on this paper. You put it in homework submissions for me. Thank you. I did not. Were you putting them in this entire time? Or just pinging them just now? All right. Let's take a look. Let me put this on screen. Actually, we'll put it on screen. So, just this one. Awesome. So this is Ladvarian B. At Ladvarian B. On Blue Sky and Twitter. I don't know how active you still are on Twitter. But let's close the window for now. We're gonna go back to that. We're going back to that. But let's see how you did. Let's see. So these are your top gestures, I believe. Excuse me. I see what you mean about falling back on structure. There's a bit of it. There's a bit too much of it. But the 5 detailed ones are the 2-minute ones. Good, 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 good. It's good that you're seeing structure. There's really not a lot of time to break it down, but there is gesture underneath it, which is the more important part that I want you to grasp. You're seeing how things clump together like this. You're seeing the way all of these fall and sort of arch together. You're seeing how this is curling I love to see that. And this is good. This is very good. I like that you've included the diamonds of the knuckles. So I like this. I really do. Try and keep it as, you know, simplified down as you can. But when you're drawing certain things, like the fingers, in gesture drawing, concern yourself a little bit less with needing to draw the individual joints where they separate. Just give me a line. Just give me a line. Give yourself line, rather. I don't need to see everything you do. But that's for practice. But as for the 2-minute draws, there's slightly bit more time to add structure. I liked it. I like it. You did a good job. Folding these together and then separating that out. I liked where your eye was in drawing this. Tell me how you felt about trying to make sure you were drawing fingers with the correct proportions. I don't mean to call this one out specifically like it's a bad thing, but I noticed if this is the full length of the finger, slightly off on your measurements. How did that feel? It was 2 minutes, so I put you under a lot of pressure to do it correctly. But thoughts on that? And I was making sure to say out loud every time. Gotta draw it half. And half is maybe the first segments. The first phalange it's harder to grasp than you think. And I understand because I do that a lot when I'm doing like really not paying attention structure behind the things that I do. Oh, this is good. I like this. Ooh, I like that. Like that. I like that you're also paying attention to by just adding a circle where these fingers tend to start. The top left one messed you up because you weren't considering how the hand turned, so it all looked messed up in the end. I see. Yes. Well, it's good that you're recognizing where you need to improve. Pardon me, swig of water. Let's go back to that hand. Yes. So, note the perspective on the knuckles. It's more to the right when it should be on the left. You're correct. Yes. Let me open that up again real quick. Yes, there is a bit that could be improved here. But it's okay. Because we're opening your eye up. If I'm doing anything, it's forcefully opening your eye, and you can see in retrospect how these things ought to have gone. And if you're developing that, that's good. I love to see that. I love to see just an acknowledgement of how you can improve. And being able to see for yourself, what can you do better? And once you hit your limit on you can't really tell, then that's when you really ask for your instructor's help. But I do think there could have been just a bit more gesture evoked here. There's a bit more of a straight coming through the middle finger. Because fingers are so gangly. Fingers are so gangly, they can go every which way that you might not expect. Which is the real messed up part about trying to draw hands. But by drawing all of these, by drawing these sort of things, we understand how they work in their extremes. Even if not their most natural. We should be practicing hands that are a bit more natural. I definitely need to more as well. But gesture drawing helps us comprehend hands in just the way they move in very extreme methods. But all that to say, you did a good job. I think you did a good job. So, we are going to do we are now going to cap off with maybe 2 5-minute hand drawings. Still not a lot of time, but I think. Why do I have pings? Who keeps pinging me? Is that a separate person? That's a separate person. Go away. Go away. we'll be doing 2 5-minute hand drawings. Try to add structure to it. You should have enough time to do that. And let's go. Don't have to draw both hands, only if you have time for it. I'll be trying to draw both hands. So this time, now, I'm expecting a bit more dimensionality to it. Seek curve. Seek a curve that you can really follow through the whole drawing, through the whole gesture. We're seeing the top plane of the hand a lot. Metacarpal or thumb. We don't really see the side plane of the thumb. Well, we kind of do. It's kind of twisting and turning all of the way around. Try to use the more advanced structure if you can, if you have time to. A bit of an irregular shape. Well, not super irregular, but if you can, that's awesome. And once again, try to think about things in relation to one another. This thumb, this tip of the thumb is sticking over the... I'm drawing the bottom hand right now. And the tip of the thumb is peeping out over the top of the palm. So consider that relative to everything else. Seeking curve to follow for everything. And we take our gestures and we refine them with more definitive shapes. Might go a little bit further out. And if your proportions are off, again, you gotta compare it to things around it, to the area that you know is the largest part of the body that's visible. This middle finger on the bottom is slightly clumped up with everything else. The point that you can see it ever so slightly behind the index finger, but the other two are not following suit. They disappear. On the bottom hand, they disappear. So the curve might be very dramatic. Might be more dramatic than you might be expecting for the hands to follow. Keep that in mind. How much time do we have? 1 more minute. We have 1 more minute. I maybe should have done the other hand, but whatever. Because that has that shows the phalanges, the shapes of the phalanges I'd like. It would have given me a better opportunity to show off how those work. How they should have worked. But oh well. If I can dig up an old notebook for all of my gesture drawing, I might still have the notepad. Big newsprint notepad of which all of my first time gesture drawing stuff is stored upon. I would love to show that off if I could. Just give people an idea of what are you chasing. And at that point I did have art experience. At that point, I did have experience in art, of drawing it myself. So I already had a bit of intuition regarding how things worked. But ooh. All right, second hand. Last one. Hold on. Don't draw this one. This one's kind of tough. This one kind of doesn't. We're gonna do a different one. If you started drawing it, sorry. We're doing this one. Two overlapping hands are that's a nice study. Not what we're trying to do right now. All right, so box is a bit more of a concave box. Not concave, but you don't see how everything. What's curved? It's curved, but yet it's doing this. We can see on the inside of that right hand, the way those fingers are curled inwards. So that's interesting. You may think to yourself, you may have noticed I'm gravitating towards the hands that are closer to the bottom and more to the right. That is because when I look up from my tablet, that's the closest sight. My monitor is located slightly. The monitor that I'm looking at these on is located slightly. What's the word? Centered to the left. You see. What do you see with your magic eyes? What do you see with your special eyes? My brand. I had a friend in high school whose favorite joke was my brand. This is when the internet was very young. Not so young that you can just like say every single meme is your favorite. Like in 2014, my brand was still hilarious. But by that time, things like Curious Velociraptor or whatever, and just the you know, the caption on the bottom and graphic in the center, a bit, we're starting to phase out in popularity. I believe even then, the half-life of a meme was already rapidly declining, which is really funny to think about. Yeah, that on the right hand, the the palm was curling in on itself. That's how you get some things that get obstructed from view. I'm trying to do the second one with as much time as I got. On the second one, on the left hand, we see that the middle finger very outstretched to the point that it is blocking. It is blocking the rest of the hand from being viewed. And it's this is just another point of they really knew how to choose people with bony fingers. Dude, I know. They were like, they must have put out an ad. Need people with bony hands to be our hand model. Hope they were paid generously. But this is just another example of do things relative to other things. Because that's how you find whether you're that's just how you find things in relation to each other. That's how you can kind of tell where does something need to align with another. Oh, I see. The joint ends here. It's kind of aligned with the tip. So therefore, it goes around there. So on and so forth. Woo! Okay. Alright. That's it. How'd everyone do? Last exercise? You're gonna wrap it up there. Work calls. Alright. Have a good day at work. Thank you for joining along with us. Hope this was enlightening. Hope you got something out of this. There really just isn't a lot to... Like, you think hands would have a lot more to say about them, but, like, at their most basic level, I just needed to tell you, you can break them down into tubes. Think about the joints. You can have the size of the whole hand, and then relate it all to the size of the palm and the middle finger. Think about some of the muscles, like the fat pads, about how those depict on everything. And see how they relate to each other, and just try to see the structure. Try to see the structure so you can really comprehend how they work. Saying you started practicing you gotta start practicing gesture in general. You think it's really fun? Yes! Yeah, dude! Yeah! Oh, I love to hear it. Gesture is very fun. Gesture is very fun. It's literally, how do you draw someone moving? It's super, super awesome to see how that goes. So, have a good day at work. Let's send everybody off. There's really not much more I can say about hands. So, homework. You love homework, wink. So what do I want you to do for homework? 5 30-second hand gesture drawings. Just basically do the same thing we did here, maybe a little bit shortened. 5 2-minute hand gesture structured hand drawings. Nah, it's more like closer to gesture / structured hand drawings. That's gonna get confusing. 5 2-minute hand gesture / structured drawings, and then 2 5-minute hand structure drawings. This is the exercise I leave you with. Let's move this here. Use lineofaction.com's hand what is this called again? Hands and feet. Hand and feet section. You bet your bottom bippy I'm gonna make the homework graphic now. 1 2 3. Miku beam. So where's our 30-second gesture drawings? Yeah, dude. And I'm gonna take... At this point, I'm literally just putting this stuff together. So if you'd like to leave now, you can. If you'd like to leave the stream now, this is If this was a real lecture, I'd be saying, you can just get out of here. But this is not the end of the video. I'll call the end of the video when I feel like it. Are there any questions anyone has? Does anyone have any questions? That's a better tense. Regarding hands that I can answer right now before we go. I would like to answer, because I don't want to leave people with questions. I want to leave people with answers. I don't really care about keeping all of these intact. I kind of did, but then I was just like, I don't care anymore. Screw it. Let's just rescale it all. Because I can draw these again anytime. They're disposable. They're exercises. You don't generally keep exercises like these. Alright, that's the homework. That's the exercises that ideally you're following up on this session with. So, let me just change today's thingy. Homework. Your homework is to continue these work we've been doing. Excuse me. Sneeze is coming on. I muted it so you wouldn't hear it. Ow. Ooh. Kind of sneeze that hurts my throat. Owie. So here's your homework. Do some more practice. I'm gonna embellish this a little bit by adding a knuckle after all the drawing has been done. But there really is no better homework than to just brush up on what you got. The VOD will contain links to some videos that I recommend watching that I did not show here. But hope you had a good time. Let's head to the end card. Once again, thank you for joining me for the workshop. Remember to subscribe to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/@RivWriterArt for the VODs when they go live. Follow me here on Twitch, twitch.tv/RivWriter. And follow me on my socials for more of my art, for posts for when these go live, and for when these homework posts go up. You can leave a reply in public, or you can join the Discord. Once again, I need to get the Discord's link. Server, I gotta turn off streamer mode. Server settings. Where's the links? Custom invite link. No. What? No. Where are the previous invites? There they are. Whatever. Invite people. Take a 7-day link. Here's a link to the Discord in Twitch chat. If you'd like to join, it's basically a ping Discord. Fully just ping Discord. You get pinged for when the streams go live if you want to join for the streams. If you want to join for the workshop, you're free to leave after that. You can ping for when my art goes live. If you're a Patreon member, then you get access to the archive of basically everything that's going to come out when it comes out. But other than that, do well on your work. I know you'll become a stronger artist. I hope this series has been informative. It has been helpful for you. And I look forward to seeing you again. So, be seeing ya.